the weighted average scoring method. By the way, let me just track back. We have everyone has seen that the audit assessment index have 7 parts. Part 1, which he has spoken about already, is about access to records. So by which way issues about vouchers, issues about you responding to the Auditor General, says that he comes to have access to do his periodic checks or value for money audits. The ministry will be able to give him access to the books, because if you go into the reports, you will see where it's reported that some refused, to give him access to his constitutional mandate. And so we looked at all of that under section 1. And there are 5 questions under section 1, right? Talking to the issue that I've just mentioned. Moving from section 1, coming to section 2, we have extra budgetary and unauthorized expenditure as the title for section 2, and there you've got 6 questions. So just don't worry about the template. It will be distributed to everybody here, and we'll also publish it online on our website so that people can go through, and if anyone wants to follow the methodology in terms of what we did, they are also free to follow the process, and I bet you will arrive at the same results. So having talked about the part 3, which is about failure in revenue generation and remittances. So essentially for the people who are getting money, you earn money, are you able to, everybody essentially, because it's under this this bit that you see, are you able, when you award contracts, the withholding tax and the value added tax you are meant to deduct, 5%, did you do it? If you did it, did you remit it? If you remitted it, there are some other issues that all of them fell under this section 3. Coming to part 4, these are very big issues. There are about 8 questions in part 4 because of the nature of part 4, and that is about procurement, public procurement. How do we go about it? Are there processes that are meant to be followed that are not followed? Because in one of the reports it's saying that someone had already submitted a certain quotation before the advert for bidding, right? So you see a lot of things. There is not a very palatable literature if you go through it, but that bit had 8 questions. Coming to 5, unretired loans, advances, and violation of e-payment policy. Everyone, if you go through the former literature I have mentioned, you will see what the financial regulation says about e-payment policy, what the financial regulation says about advances, about interests, and all of that. So under this section, we've got 1 to 3 questions. For part 6 and part 7, there are special parts. And so part 6 had 1 question, and it's essentially trying to quantify. It's trying to quantify the amount of money involved in the issues picked out. Did it cross a certain threshold? And if it did cross a certain threshold, that threshold we are talking about is 1 billion naira. And there is a justification for that in the audit assessment literature. If you read the beginning part of this literature. And so the idea is that in Nigeria, a lot of us are sick, a lot of women in the hospital, the children are dying from post-delivery issues, women are dying as well, and a whole lot of other things. So if you look at the opportunity cost of those monies involved, you will see that it is not necessarily a very good way to look at social justice if you look at it from that bit. And so what we have done is that in all, there are a total of 29 questions. 28 questions, were used for evaluating the 16 ministries, departments, and agencies headquarters who are critical to the economy and to the development of Nigeria. The other 4, which include the NMPC, the FIRS, the DPR, and the Nigeria Customs Service, they were adjudged differently. And they were adjudged on the basis of what we also found in the Auditor General's report. Because in that report, he says about, okay, people go about doing deductions on monies generated that are meant to be channeled to the Federation account. And so that was for them, but for every other person, 28 questions. How did we do it? So what we did was to put together these questions and scored participants or the selected MDAs on the basis of each sub-index. Like we do an average. If there are about 5 questions in all the 5 questions per 5 options per question, and so if in the audit report say a certain question, let me pick one question from them. Just go. Let me pick one question from all. Keep going all. Yeah, keep going. The questions bit. So let me use this for example, right? Could you just go, baby? Go. Okay, let me use this. Let me use this question number 3 from part 5, right? Part 5, question 3 is looking at violation of e-payment policy, and we understand what e-payment policy is about. So the financial regulation says that the e-payment people will have to be paid through their personal or corporate bank accounts. So you don't pay people cash. Every payment has to emanate in that light, and there are other provisions there. And so if you go into details of the Auditor General's report, you will understand where this question is coming from. And so if in a year, if we are looking at 2014 to 2017, right? And so if in 2014, a ministry headquarter is mentioned to have, been found guilty for this question 3, that would end them option B. And what does option B say? Option B says there were documented cases reported in 1 out of 4 years in focus. So if the ministry was mentioned in 2014 and mentioned in 2015, that moves them to option C, which means that they were mentioned in 2 out of the 4 years in focus. If the ministry is mentioned in 3, say they were mentioned in 2014, 2015, and 2016, that would make them to come in D, right? And as you are going down, your score is going down, right? I'll come to that in a bit. And if in the worst case scenario, the ministry is mentioned in all 4 years to have done that particular thing, that will score them that last point. And with that, I will go into the scoring, which will mean that in this instance, if you are mentioned in the 4 years, you will get a 0, right? Moving on, if you are mentioned in 3 out of the 4 years, you will get 25 points. If you were mentioned in 2 out of 4, you will get 75, right? Sorry, you will get 50, pardon me. If you are mentioned in 1 out of 4, you get 75 points. Whereas if you are not mentioned at all, you get 100 for that particular question. And so, using this part 5 as an example, because in part 5 we had 3 questions. So, the method there is just to do the average. I will come down to the weighted bit in a moment. And so, having done this, for these 3 questions in part 5, if someone scored maybe 100, 100 in 2, 100 in 1, the average of 100, 100, 100 will still be 100. And so when I get down to presenting the results for each sub-index, you will see how people fared on the basis of what I'm explaining. In the end, we will now come down to the weights applied. So the weights applied are as follows. For section, or rather for parts 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, they've got a weight, part 4, part 5, they've got a weight of 15 each. And if you multiply 15 times 5, you will get 75. And so that leaves us with 25. Part 6 which is about the monetary value of the infractions documented in the reports. That part 6 has a weight of 25. And essentially, if the money you had or the money involved in all the issues mentioned in the 4 years of the report, if that money passes the threshold of 1 billion, that will mean that that person, you either get 100 there or a 0. So when I come down to that, we'll see the charts and what had happened with the audit assessment method.